I've got 8 keys to business modelling, and it sounds kind of dry, I know to people, but I want to explain why I think business modelling is really important. And I guess like way back when I was at university, we looked at a guy called Buckminster Fuller that many people have heard of. And one of the key things he said is that if you can imagine it, then you need to be able to build a working model, and then people will understand what you're on about. And so for me, when I discovered business modelling, I realised that was for me like building a Buckminster Fuller type model. You know, if I can build a model, I can explain how the money flows through a business, how the business works, all on one page, pretty simply. Businesses often kind of get lost, and when you're a business owner, you often do all the things you think have to be done. And what I'm really interested in is speed. So I want to know how fast can I make this business a success? And that's what these 8 keys give you. They mean that you can throw out the stuff that's not worth doing, the stuff that you think you should do, but actually doesn't build any value in the business. And what it also allows you to do is to communicate the plan very, very simply if you want to hire employees. And I don't believe you can call yourself a business if you don't have a team around you. You're just a self-employed person. So this is not for the self-employed. This is for people who want to grow a team, create a business, and what I call like run like hell. Key number 1 is customer segment. And by that what I mean is really, really getting specific and knowing who you're targeting. Now a lot of people come to me and they come with an idea, their brilliant idea. And I find it really hard to know whether that brilliant idea is actually brilliant or not. Because unless it's designed for someone, it's just a thing you want to make. And most businesses are not designed around a thing you want to make. If you don't have customers, you don't have a business. So what I would say around this customer segment one is to be as specific as possible. Now New Zealanders like to build stuff for everyone. And what I would say is that if it's for everyone, it's for no one. So the more specific your customer segment can be, the more likely you are to succeed. So it could be things like it's for families earning over 100 grand, or it could be for movie lovers with kids, or it could be for other app developers, or women HR managers, or beekeepers. I don't think it really, it doesn't matter what it is, but the more that you can know that customer, the more you can build empathy with the people who are like that, and the more that you can convince them that you really are out to solve their problems. Now, as an entrepreneur, I've had people copy my ideas, and we're all often a little worried about that. And what I've discovered is that people who copy my ideas have not done the work to understand their customer. So if you know your customer so well, and someone copies your idea, you have the opportunity to come up with another idea that that customer really needs, and that's how you future-proof your business. And the person who copied you, they're going to always be 5 steps behind you because they don't have the same depth of relationship or understanding of who they're targeting. So key number 1, really know a segment and nail that segment and be very disciplined about what that segment is. So key number 2 is sometimes called the value proposition. It sounds like a big bunch of words. What it really means is what problem does this solve? So for me, it's got to be really specific. Like it could be hive management. I'm a beekeeper in my spare time. I'm interested in what I can do to improve my yield, improve the health of my hive. And so if you can design products for me that do that, I'm really interested. You understand my need and you've got a solution to a problem. Or it could be something like horse health, for the people who own horses. Or it could be you need a solution for bored kids. Most people don't think about the problem. They again think about themselves. Entrepreneurs who do well are not the ones who think about, gosh, I want to create this thing and now I've got to go and sell this thing. What they do is they go, mum's at home with kids on the school holidays, have bored kids, how can I solve that problem? Rather than, I've always wanted to develop a game. So for me, that second key is really, really understanding what problem you're trying to solve for the customer segment that you identified in step 1. The third key is really understanding what you're selling. In most businesses, you've really only got 2 options. You're either selling products, services, or a combination. So with products, you could sell your own products that you've developed, or you could sell other people's as a reseller. So it's really important that you understand how many units you need to sell, what the price of those is, and what the relationships are with, say, a reseller. Secondly, if you're selling services, most people selling services do it on a time and materials basis. So it's worth understanding how many hours you have to sell, and with those hours, what the hourly rate of that is. So let me give you an example. If you're selling a product, like say you might be selling some software, then you might add some services to it. So you could sell them the software, and then you might sell them a maintenance contract, which is like a monthly services contract that goes on top. And it's just really worth being able to express very quickly and easily what it is that you sell. So coaching, for example, it could be either, right? If you're a coaching business, you could sell a product, which is a monthly retainer for, I'm going to give you these 3 or 4 things every month. Or alternatively, it could be an hourly rate that someone calls you up for a couple of $100 an hour and gets advice. So there's no right or wrong way to do this, but you should know for yourself which is the best business model for you. So you either sell products plus services, or services sometimes with products underneath. So another example might be, I get a service from my personal trainer, but he also sells me supplements, which is a product that he sells on top. So it's worth just really getting clear about the language of that and how the two fit together. And most businesses are a combination of both. So products with services or services with products. Really understand that, and you'll understand how the finances start to come into the business. So my fourth key, I call sales solves everything. And basically, if there's anything that you need to do in your business, it's sell. So if you have revenue coming in, cash flow coming into the business, you've got choices. And if you're not selling anything, you're truly not in business. So one of the big things around sales is deciding what kinds of relationships you want to have with your customers, and also what your path to market is. So this key is all about, if we think about relationships, they're choices that we make, and we can't be everything to everyone, which you know in every other relationship in your life, right? So you could decide if you want to have an intimate relationship with a customer. So an intimate relationship might mean that you email them regularly. I get text messages all the time from apps I use. It's quite a personal relationship, even if it's automated. On another way is that if you're a bigger company, you might decide you've got key account management. So maybe 20 of your clients just kind of get run-of-the-mill treatment, but your top 3 or 4 get some real special, someone dedicated to them when they phone with a problem, or if they phone with more of a relationship they want to build, they've got the same person every time to talk to. Those are choices around how you deliver. It might be completely remote. If you try to call Google, right? They're never going to answer. So they have a relationship with their customer which is all about remote. It's all about self-service, and they try all the time to make their FAQs, their asked questions, as comprehensive as possible, so that there is no personal interaction with the customer, right? So they're just choices. Other businesses might decide they're going to do online help and online chat, live chat. So often there's a little box that pops up on a website and you can talk to someone live and they help you to complete the sale or process. So how engaged you are in that relationship or not, those are really important decisions that every business has to make. And often they're not made consciously. But the more consciously you can make it, the better you can design your business. And then the second side to this one is about, how do you sell? Do you sell through a channel? So what I mean by that is, are you selling directly? So do I meet, say, either face-to-face or directly from my website to someone? Or am I going through agents or referral partners? So for some people, their website is their key sales tool. And if your website doesn't have a big buy now button on it, you're wasting your time. But for some people, they're using their website to direct people to the retailers. So instead, they might say, well, I don't want to compete with my retailers. They're my channel to market. They're my agents, basically. So I'm going to use my website to drive people into RD1 or Farmlands or, Dick Smith, well, it's gone, but whoever it is, in order for them to buy the product there. And those, again, are key decisions that you need to make. And one of the big ones that underlines that is distribution and licensing. So if I'm selling direct, do I have to do fulfillment? Do I have to find a way to get you the product? And I may decide I don't want to do that. It's not worth it to me. It's better for me to have a relationship with businesses who on-sell my product. So that fourth key is really about the actual mechanics of sales. What's the nature of the relationship with my customer, and am I dealing with them directly or am I dealing with them through someone else? So my fifth key is actually all about getting as much freedom as absolutely possible. I really like having a team around me, but at the same time, I like to have a team around me who can do their minimum. So I like to outsource as much of the delivery as is possible. And I think it's one of those things people should really think about doing. New Zealanders often think that we have to control everything about our business, but often we can get much faster speed in a startup business particularly by outsourcing things. So using subcontractors instead of employees until we're big enough to have those employees. Outsourcing warehousing. So there's a lot of companies out there that will help to do your warehousing. Equally, it's looking at all of the tasks that need to be done in your business, and instead of hiring, the magical, perfect marketing person, maybe what you do instead is get a media buying agency who can do that piece, or a SEO expert who can help you with that very specific piece. Or a web design company. People often outsource the development of their web, or even production of a prototype or production of processes. And I think it's quite important to sit down and really work out what are the skills we have to have in the business. Like, what do I have to have either myself or in my key employees, and everything else I'm going to subcontract out, and it will give you a lot more freedom and it will get you to the end faster. So outsource as much delivery as you can. Right, so my sixth key is what I call the have to do's. So it's the key activities that your business has to do in order to fulfill on the promise that you made to your customer way back in steps 1 and 2, keys 1 and 2. So you might remember key 1 was to look at the customer segment, and 2 was to really understand what problem you're solving for them. So for me, you can't really outsource that diagnosis. That's something that you have to do in your business. Customer service is one that you really need to make some decisions about. Are we going to do it or is someone else going to do it? But in my experience, if you don't have customer service built into the DNA of your business from day one, you're probably going to fail. You can make choices about fulfillment. So what I mean by that is if you're selling a product, whether it's delivered by somebody else or not, that's not really going to make a big difference to the customer experience if you get that right. You should think about whether product design is done by you or done by someone else. The development. One thing that I think is absolutely essential in most businesses is what I call the curation of stock. So if you have a personal feeling about that customer segment and about what problem you're solving for them, then I think the design of the products for them and the curation of what you choose to sell them, whether it's a thing or whether it's maybe a movie or a book or a piece of clothing, I think that's something that you need to do for yourselves within the business. So I think you have to identify the key activities that have to be done. My key number 7 is what I call key resources. And what I mean by this is, what are the resources that your business absolutely has to have in order to be able to operate? And like, for example, if you're doing an online movie company, you would need to have content rights for the content that you want to sell. Or you'd probably also have to have access to servers, whether it's Amazon or your own. In a lot of companies, you'll have to have intellectual property development. You have to have leadership. You'll have to have key team members. I'm fascinated by data businesses, so I'm really interested in owning the data that my customers create and what can I do with that. So that becomes a key resource for us, either to on-sell to others or to use in the development of our products. Now, that's not true for every business, so you have to identify for yourself what those key resources are. And if you haven't identified the key resources, it makes it really difficult when we come to look at what the cost structure of the business is. So you have to do key 7 before we can go on to key 8, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So key 8 is understanding the costs in your business. Now, you remember earlier on we looked at what's the pricing of the products, so what's the mix of products and services, and we looked at what the revenue then in the business is as a result of that. The key costs is the other side of the picture. So when you've identified all those activities that you have to do in item 7, key 7. You need to think about, what are your people going to cost, what's rent going to cost, what's the product going to cost you to develop, what is marketing going to cost you, and you might want to get right down to the detail of, what's the cost of acquisition of each customer. If you've been through each of these 7 steps in order, doing a budget is going to be surprisingly easy. A lot of people try to create a budget and then make up a story around it. And in my experience, the best way to get to a budget is to have done these full 8 steps in order, and then the story tells itself. It's very easy for you to understand what your key activities are, what the relationships are with your suppliers, what your costs are going to be. And then doing a budget, while they're always a creative writing exercise, it becomes a lot easier. Yeah, sure. So I've talked about these 8 keys. Now, I don't think this is something you do once in your business. Actually, it's an iterative thing. So for me, as soon as you start working through all of these 8 keys, you want to tweak the categories until each one of them is easy and cost effective. And you need to be really clear that you're making choices. Now, a lot of us like to do everything. I'm one of those people too. But actually, the key to making a business fast and profitable is to throw out all of the extraneous activities that you don't need to do to get there. So if we come back again, my key number 1 was to look at the customer segment and to do that first. So not to play around with your product until you really understand who it is that you're targeting. So I suggest that you make that as specific as possible. And often we're worried that if our market's too small, we're not going to do well. But the research out there is that the more targeted you market, the more likely you are to succeed. And then you can expand to other markets when that's successful. So 1, nail that customer segment, know it so well. 2, understand what problem that you're going to solve for that segment, right? So, and I mentioned things like beekeeping or looking after horses, or, it might be coaching other business owners, or it could be creating beautiful homes. It doesn't matter what the problem is, but the more that you understand that that customer segment has this problem, then you will be able to create what's called a value proposition for them. So the third thing then is what to sell that customer segment that solves that problem. And it will either be a product or a service or a combination of those. And to get very specific about that, and as specific as you can about the price to the customer, what they will bear. And I don't believe in doing what's called cost-based pricing. So don't look at your costs and add a bit on. Work out what is the most that your customer will pay to have that problem solved, and do your pricing based on the solution that you're offering. The fourth key that I talked about was to really identify the nature of the relationship that you want to have with that customer. So is it direct or is it through others? So example like that might be, is it through a web directly to them, or are you sending them to a retail store for their experience? So really think deeply about that, and also the nature of the relationship. Is it going to be more like Google, where it's very hands-off self-service? Or is it going to be more like, perhaps I bought a really great car recently and I get this lovely, I get phone calls and letters reminding me that I need a service and that the car needs to be brought in and asking me if I'm happy. Those are very different choices they've made around the way their relationship is with the customer. The fifth key is trying to get speed by outsourcing anything that you don't have to do yourself. So thinking about what partners you could use to either sell or to create or to develop or to help you with marketing or leadership or accounting or any of the things that you could outsource. That will mean that you can have a leaner, faster team. The sixth one is really understanding what you're going to do yourselves. So play to your skill set. The things that you're best at, do. Everything else I would send out. And understand what is important for the business to do that you really can't risk having anyone else do. The seventh one is really understanding what resources are required for that business to operate well. So it might be a location, it might be servers, so I suggest using things like Amazon. It might be getting the content rights to using something, or if you're buying or selling something, trading, it's accessing that stock to sell. So really understanding what resources you need. And having done that, you can then really think particularly using those key 5, 6 and 7, they help you to determine what the cost base of the business is. And so key 8 is really understanding what costs you have and thinking about how you can screw those costs down at the same time as getting revenue up. And to me, that's the fastest way to get to profit.